The Galactic Games had become a spectacle of unmatched prowess and cutting-edge technology, drawing the most advanced species from across the galaxy. It was an annual event, a chance for warriors to display their finest skills and for their species to assert dominance. For centuries, the Games had been the battlefield where advanced plasma rifles, impenetrable energy shields, and sophisticated tactics ruled supreme. The arena, buzzing with anticipation, was filled with representatives from countless species, each ready to prove they were the greatest in the universe. And then the humans arrived. A murmur rippled through the alien crowd as the human team entered the arena. Standing tall and looking calm, they carried what could only be described as primitive weapons, bows and arrows. The Zorathian commander, renowned for his plasma-based artillery, sneered audibly, followed by laughter from the other contestants. The humans, latecomers to the galactic community, were seen as a backward species, barely above the threshold of spacefaring technology. But to bring bows? Sticks and string? That was more than ridiculous, it was insulting. "Look at them!" one of the KRY warriors scoffed, his mandibles clicking in amusement. "They think this is a toy competition." The human captain, an unassuming figure with graying hair, simply smiled at the taunts. He exchanged a glance with his team, all archers, standing silently and observing the scene with calm, calculating eyes. There was no need to respond to the jeers. After all, they were about to do something that would silence the entire galaxy. The Galactic Games were not just about fighting, they were about honor, recognition, and proving superiority. The prize for winning wasn't just a trophy, it was dominance in trade deals, territorial expansions, and most importantly, respect among species. And yet, with all that on the line, here were the humans with bows, wooden shafts sticking out of leather quivers, as if they had wandered into the wrong millennia. The first battle was announced, humans versus the KRY. The crowd was already placing bets, none in favor of the humans. The KRY, towering insect creatures, were armed with plasma cannons and shields capable of withstanding the strongest energy blasts. The human captain nodded to his team, and they took their places, silently pulling their bows from their backs. "Don't bother," a Zorathian called out from the sidelines. "You'll never get a shot off before you're vaporized." The humans remained unfazed. As the battle began, the KRY moved first, firing near-invisible blasts of plasma at the humans. One bolt grazed past the human's head, the heat searing through the air, but none of the humans flinched. They took their time, positioning their arrows, aiming carefully. The crowd groaned, already anticipating a short match. And then, the first arrow flew. For a moment, the audience almost missed it. It seemed to move impossibly fast, faster than anything they had seen. The KRY warrior it was aimed at barely had time to register it before the arrow struck his shield, and went straight through it, piercing his armor and sending him crashing to the ground. The stadium fell silent. The remaining KRY were visibly shaken, but they quickly recalibrated their tactics. They adjusted their shields, confident it had been a fluke, a lucky shot. But as the next few arrows flew, each found its mark with precision, bypassing the KRY defenses as if the shields weren't even there. It didn't matter how fast they moved or how advanced their technology was. The arrows flew faster, hit harder, and cut through their armor like it was paper. In under a minute, the KRY team was down. The humans hadn't even moved from their original spots. The alien crowd, which had been roaring with laughter moments ago, now sat in stunned silence, unsure how to process what they had just seen. What just happened?" one alien muttered. "Those were arrows," another whispered. Arrows. The disbelief spread quickly. Aliens had spent millennia perfecting energy weapons, refining shields that could withstand supernova-level attacks. The idea that a simple projectile, a human arrow, could outmatch all of that was incomprehensible. But there it was, undeniable, with the KRY lying incapacitated on the arena floor. The Zorathian commander, still watching from the sidelines, narrowed his eyes. He couldn't deny what had just happened, but he wasn't ready to accept it either. "They must be using some trick," he muttered. "A hidden technology. This can't just be archery." The human captain turned to face the crowd, a small smile playing on his lips. He said nothing, just nodded to his team, who returned their bows to their backs and began walking out of the arena, unbothered by the stunned stares of the audience. It was only the first round, after all. There would be plenty of time for the galaxy to come to terms with what they had just witnessed. But for now, the message was clear: humans, with their primitive weapons, were not to be underestimated. Not anymore. The KRYL were still being carried off the field as murmurs filled the stadium. The shock had not yet worn off, and the silence was only broken by the occasional sputter of disbelief. Zorathian and KRYL commanders exchanged bewildered looks, unsure how to interpret what had just unfolded. Yet, despite the mounting confusion, the games had to continue. No one was sure what to expect now that the humans had completely shattered expectations. The second match was quickly scheduled, and this time, everyone paid attention. Humans versus the Zorathians. This was the fight that the crowd had been eagerly waiting for, though for very different reasons now. The Zorathians were widely considered the greatest warriors in the galaxy, renowned for their battle tactics and their unbreakable energy barriers. Their weapons were powered by reactors that could fire concentrated blasts capable of leveling mountains. It was a foregone conclusion, or at least it had been, until now. The Zorathian commander, though visibly irritated, was determined to restore order. He didn't believe for a second that the humans' earlier victory had been anything more than a fluke. Perhaps the KRYL had underestimated their opponents, letting arrogance get in the way of their usual discipline. But the Zorathians wouldn't make that mistake. They would analyze the humans carefully, break down whatever trick they had up their sleeve, and swiftly end this embarrassing charade. The human archers, however, showed no sign of nerves or pressure. If anything, they appeared even more relaxed than before. Each one was confident, moving deliberately as they took their positions, bows in hand. The arena buzzed with tension, the previous mockery replaced by an uneasy anticipation. Could these humans possibly do it again? The match began with a burst of action. The Zorathians, knowing they couldn't afford to give the humans a moment of respite, immediately unleashed a barrage of plasma fire. Their speed and coordination were flawless, designed to overwhelm their opponents before they could react. But again, the humans remained unnervingly calm. They didn't attempt to dodge or run for cover. Instead, they raised their bows and aimed, eyes sharp and steady. The first arrow was loosed, and for the briefest moment, everything seemed to pause. The Zorathians, like the KRYL before them, had expected the arrow to be slow, to follow normal physics. Instead, it vanished from sight, only to reappear an instant later as it struck one of the Zorathian warriors squarely in the chest, slicing through both his shield and his armor as if they weren't there. He collapsed before he even realized what had happened. The alien spectators gasped audibly. The Zorathian commander's eyes narrowed, now fully aware that this wasn't just a trick. Something far more dangerous was happening. But before he could issue a command, 2 more arrows flew, and 2 more Zorathians fell, their shields and armor offering no protection. The precision of the humans was uncanny, almost mechanical. They weren't merely firing at random, they were calculating every shot with the precision of snipers. Panic began to set in among the remaining Zorathians. Their once unshakable confidence crumbled under the weight of this unexpected and terrifying threat. Shields were raised higher, energy outputs increased to maximum, but it didn't matter. The arrows cut through them effortlessly, as though they were made of nothing but air. Each shot was faster than the last, each impact deadlier. The Zorathian commander tried to rally his troops, but it was no use. One by one, they fell, unable to even get close enough to strike back. What had once seemed like an assured victory for the galaxy's greatest warriors was now turning into a slaughter. The humans hadn't moved from their positions, hadn't broken a sweat, and yet they had dismantled the Zorathians' elite force with nothing but simple bows and arrows. The match was over in minutes. What had taken the Zorathians centuries to perfect, their impenetrable defenses, their tactical superiority, was undone by the very thing they had laughed at, human archery. The crowd didn't know what to do with the scene before them. How could they, with all their advanced technology, be witnessing something so out of place, something so utterly impossible? Yet the evidence was undeniable. The Zorathian bodies were being cleared from the field, their energy shields still flickering weakly as if unable to comprehend how they had been bypassed. The spectators who had mocked the humans earlier now sat in stunned silence, eyes wide with realization. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were witnessing the price of that arrogance. The human captain didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He simply nodded to his team, who calmly lowered their bows and prepared to exit the arena. They hadn't said a word during the match, and they didn't need to. Their actions had spoken louder than any boast or taunt could have. As they walked out of the arena, the Zorathian commander stood frozen, staring at the retreating figures with a mix of disbelief and rage. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. The humans had gotten lucky, he was convinced of that. They had some hidden technology, some unseen advantage, and he would find it. But as the crowd continued to buzz with anxious whispers, the question hung in the air, unspoken yet undeniable: what if this wasn't luck? What if this was just the beginning? The humans left the stadium in the same way they had entered it, calm, collected, and unfazed by the spectacle around them. They had nothing to prove. They knew what they were capable of, and now, so did the rest of the galaxy. The Galactic Games had just shifted in a way no one had expected, and the galaxy's finest warriors were left grappling with a terrifying new reality. Humanity, with its primitive weapons, had just turned the rules of the game on their heads. The aftermath of the second round left the galaxy buzzing with speculation. Every corner of the arena was filled with discussions about the humans' mysterious ability to take down the Zorathians and KRYL so effortlessly. Theories swirled, ranging from hidden tech to covert alliances with other species. But no one had answers, not even the scientists who tried to analyze the wreckage of the Zorathians' shields. The Zorathian commander, humiliated but still determined, was now demanding answers. He marched up to the human captain, his voice filled with barely contained fury. "What is this? No primitive weapon should be able to pierce through our shields. What are you hiding?" The human captain smiled, a calm, almost serene expression that only fueled the Zorathians' frustration. "We're not hiding anything. Just a little ingenuity." He left it at that, no further explanation, no justification. It wasn't arrogance, just a quiet confidence that spoke volumes. The commander stormed off, still convinced there was something more to uncover. Meanwhile, the galaxy's top scientists began dissecting the footage of the match frame by frame, trying to understand how arrows of all things, could move faster than light. One alien researcher, baffled, tried to replicate the speed in a lab, using quantum accelerators to test how any physical object could reach those velocities. But the answers remained elusive. Human technology had evolved in a way no one had anticipated, quietly and in an entirely different direction from the rest of the galaxy. The truth was far simpler than they imagined, though. Humanity's struggle to keep up with the rest of the galaxy had pushed them to innovate in unexpected ways. While the other species poured their resources into energy weapons and shields, humans had quietly developed something unique. Their scientists had turned to quantum mechanics, not for weaponry in the conventional sense, but to explore new forms of propulsion and kinetic energy. Through years of research and experimentation, humans had figured out how to manipulate quantum fields to accelerate physical objects at faster than light speeds. The human arrows weren't ordinary. They were equipped with small quantum reactors that bent spacetime around them, allowing them to bypass the constraints of conventional physics. What looked like an ancient weapon was, in fact, the pinnacle of human technological advancement. The key was subtlety. The arrows didn't just travel faster than light. They were designed to destabilize energy fields as they passed through them. This was the secret to piercing through even the most advanced shields. The Zorathians had spent centuries perfecting their defenses against energy weapons, but they had never considered a physical projectile capable of bypassing their tech entirely. Word of the humans' secrets slowly began to spread, though only in whispers. Some of the galaxy's leaders were intrigued, others wary. The idea that humans, of all species, had mastered such a unique technology was difficult to swallow. But it was undeniable now. Humans weren't just catching up, they were setting the stage for something far more dangerous. In the human camp, there was no celebration, no boasting. For them, this was just another step in proving their worth on the galactic stage. The captain and his team prepared for the final round of the games with the same calm precision they had shown throughout the competition. They didn't need to shout about their abilities. Their actions had already spoken louder than any words could. The final round announcement brought with it a renewed tension. The Zorathians were still considered the strongest species in the galaxy, despite their earlier loss. But this time, the stakes were even higher. The humans would face not just a single Zorathian squad but a combined force of the galaxy's elite warriors. The message was clear: the galaxy would not allow humans to continue embarrassing them without a fight. As the day of the final round approached, the human team remained unfazed. They had expected this from the start. The rest of the galaxy was only now catching up to the fact that humans had evolved beyond their expectations, but humanity had always known it would come to this. Their quiet determination was both unnerving and inspiring. They weren't just fighting to win the Galactic Games, they were fighting to prove that they belonged, that they had more to offer than anyone could have imagined. Back in the galaxy's most powerful circles, discussions were becoming more serious. The rulers of the great empires had begun to consider the implications of what the humans had demonstrated. If this technology spread, it could upend the entire balance of power. They had to act fast. The Zorathian commander, now fully aware of the threat, made it his mission to uncover the secrets of the human archers. But he was too late. The humans had already mastered what the galaxy could barely comprehend. As the final round loomed, the galaxy's attention was fixed on the humans. Their quiet strength had shifted the entire dynamic of the competition. What had begun as a spectacle of arrogance and overconfidence had transformed into a moment of reckoning. The aliens, for all their technological advances, were now confronted with something they had never accounted for: human ingenuity. The stage was set. The final battle wasn't just a test of skill or strength, it was a battle for the future of the galaxy's order. And for the first time, the galaxy wasn't sure who would come out on top. Humans had shown they were not just participants in the Galactic Games, they were contenders, perhaps even victors. As the final preparations were made, the human captain gathered his team, their calm demeanor unchanged. He didn't need to tell them what was at stake. They knew. They had always known. And now, the galaxy would see just how far humans were willing to go. The final match was about to begin. The air in the arena was thick with tension, an almost tangible weight pressing down on every spectator, participant, and official alike. Everyone had come to realize that this wasn't just another battle in the Galactic Games, this was a turning point. The galaxy's most advanced species were about to face humanity, a species they had long considered insignificant. Now they knew better, but it was too late to reverse the course of events. The combined force of the galaxy's elite warriors stood in formation, their expressions a mixture of resolve and nervousness. For the first time, doubt had crept into their ranks. They had witnessed what the humans were capable of. They knew that the shields and energy weapons they once believed to be unstoppable had failed against mere arrows. The humans, on the other hand, looked as calm as ever, unfazed by the opposition they were about to face. As the signal for battle rang out, the elite warriors moved in unison, firing their energy weapons in a devastating barrage designed to overwhelm the humans before they could react. Every available shield was activated, creating a nearly impenetrable wall of energy in front of the combined forces. This time, they weren't taking any chances. They had studied the previous rounds, analyzed the humans' tactics, and upgraded their defenses. The humans might have surprised them before, but this time they believed they were prepared. The humans didn't rush. Instead, they moved deliberately, their focus unbroken as they knocked their arrows and drew their bows. They aimed, not at the bodies of their enemies, but at the space between them, at the tiny fluctuations in their shields. And then, in one smooth motion, the arrows were released. Faster than the eye could track, they zipped through the air, disappearing momentarily before reappearing at the exact points where the shields were weakest. The first few elite warriors fell before they even had time to comprehend what was happening. The arrows tore through their defenses, cutting through energy barriers and armor as if they were made of nothing more than air. The combined force, which had prided itself on its unity and strength, was suddenly fractured, their ranks breaking as panic set in. It wasn't just the speed of the arrows that was terrifying, it was their precision. Every shot hit its mark, exploiting weaknesses that the elite warriors didn't even know they had. The arrows seemed to have a mind of their own, weaving through energy blasts, bypassing shields, and finding their targets with unerring accuracy. What should have been an impossible task, to defeat the most powerful warriors in the galaxy, was turning into another effortless victory for the humans. The remaining warriors attempted to regroup, desperate to mount a counteroffensive. But the humans, having already demonstrated their superiority, didn't allow it. Another volley of arrows was unleashed, and with it, the last hope of resistance was extinguished. In the blink of an eye, the battlefield was quiet once again, the only sound the faint hum of dying energy shields and the collapse of the final Zorathian. The audience, which had been roaring with anticipation moments before, now sat in stunned silence. No one could believe what they had just witnessed. The best the galaxy had to offer, the finest warriors and the most advanced technology, had fallen without even denting the humans' defenses. It wasn't just a victory, it was a complete and utter domination. The human captain, still as composed as ever, lowered his bow and surveyed the battlefield. He knew what this victory meant. The Galactic Games had been designed to determine who among the galaxy's species was the strongest, the most advanced, the most worthy of respect. By winning, humanity hadn't just claimed a title, they had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. What had started as an attempt to prove their worth had turned into something much larger. Now, every species present had to reckon with the reality that humans were not to be underestimated, not anymore. As the realization settled over the arena, the leaders of the galaxy's great empires exchanged uneasy glances. This outcome hadn't been predicted, and it raised unsettling questions about humanity's place in the galactic order. Could they continue to treat humans as a lesser species, or had that window closed forever? More importantly, what else were the humans capable of that no one had yet seen? The human team, having completed their task, turned and began to leave the arena. There was no fanfare, no celebration. Their victory was quiet, dignified, and absolute. They had nothing to prove anymore. The galaxy had already witnessed everything they needed to see. As they exited, the audience slowly began to react. Some cheered, their voices tentative at first but growing louder with each passing second. Others sat in silence, still trying to process the implications of what had just transpired. For the first time in the history of the Galactic Games, the outcome wasn't just a matter of pride, it was a question of survival. The galaxy had been shaken to its core, and the aftershocks would be felt for years to come. The human captain allowed himself a small smile as he heard the growing applause behind him. The galaxy might not fully understand what had just happened, but they would, in time. Humanity had arrived, and they were here to stay. This wasn't just a victory in the games, it was a declaration. The galaxy would never be the same again. As the humans disappeared from view, the leaders of the galaxy's empires began to quietly convene, their expressions grim. They needed to discuss what came next, how to deal with this new threat. Humanity's display had been a warning as much as it had been a triumph. They had shown that they could outthink, outfight, and outmaneuver even the best the galaxy had to offer. Now, the question on everyone's mind was the same: what would the humans do next? And more importantly, how would the galaxy respond? In the silence that followed, one thing was clear: the humans had not just won the games, they had redefined them. And in doing so, they had redefined their place in the galaxy.